The package arrived on my 40th birthday, wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine, just as his letters had been 20 years ago. Inside was a single photograph, me, standing in front of Belmont House, wearing a red dress that no longer exists. On the back, written in his unmistakable handwriting, were 5 words that made my blood run cold. I know what you did. I should have burned it immediately. Instead, I sat at my kitchen counter, staring at the image until my coffee went cold and my hands stopped shaking. My name is Eleanor Mitchell, and the careful life I'd built was about to unravel like a poorly knitted sweater. One pull, and everything would fall apart. Mom? My daughter Rachel's voice startled me. I quickly slipped the photograph into my laptop bag as she wandered into the kitchen, already dressed for school in her pristine uniform. At 16, she was the spitting image of me at that age, except for her eyes. Those were entirely her father's, dark and intelligent, missing nothing. Happy birthday, she smiled, sliding a small wrapped package across the counter. Though I'm pretty sure 40 isn't as ancient as you're making it out to be. I managed a laugh, though it felt hollow in my throat. Tell that to my gray hairs. Opening her gift revealed a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a tiny key. The irony wasn't lost on me. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Thank you. I fastened it around my wrist, the metal cool against my skin. Rachel beamed, completely unaware that her mother's past was threatening to crash into our present like a runaway train. I've got debate club after school, she reminded me, grabbing her backpack. Dad's picking me up. James, my husband of 17 years, the man who thought he knew everything about me, the successful surgeon who had fallen in love with the quiet librarian, never suspecting she was actually the architect of her own carefully constructed reality. Have a good day, I called after her, waiting until the front door clicked shut before pulling out the photograph again. The girl in the image smiled back at me, radiant in her ignorance of what was to come. Summer of 1999, I was 18. Freshly graduated and drunk on the possibility of escape from my small-town life. That's when I met Marcus. Marcus Lawrence had been everything I wasn't: wealthy, worldly, magnetic. His family owned Belmont House, the sprawling estate that had fascinated our small Connecticut town for generations. When he offered me a summer job cataloging their private library, it felt like fate. In reality, it was the beginning of a nightmare that would take 20 years to resurface. Pulling out my phone, I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I'd never been able to delete. Catherine's name stared back at me, a digital reminder of promises we'd made in the dark. After 3 rings, her familiar voice answered. I was wondering when you'd call. No greeting, no pleasantries. Catherine never wasted words. Let me guess, you got one too. My heart stuttered. The photograph? Mine's different. It's from that night. She paused, and I could hear her taking a deep breath. We need to talk. Not over the phone. I can't. I have meetings all day at the library, and then, this isn't optional. She cut me off. 7 o'clock. The blue door. Don't be late. And don't bring your conscience. We need to handle this like we did before. The line went dead before I could respond. I sat there, memories flooding back like water through a broken dam. The summer heat, the musty smell of old books, Marcus's smile, the way Catherine's hands shook as she helped me dig, the weight of secrets we thought we'd buried deep enough to stay hidden. My phone buzzed again, a text from James, dinner reservations at 8. Don't forget it's your birthday. Love you. Such a normal message, so perfectly ordinary. James lived in a world where birthday dinners weren't interrupted by decades-old secrets, where photographs didn't arrive like time bombs wrapped in brown paper. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine telling him everything, but the truth would destroy more than just my marriage. It would shatter Rachel's world, tear apart the life I'd worked so hard to build. Standing up, I caught my reflection in the kitchen window. At 40, I still looked put together, shoulder-length brown hair neatly styled, minimal makeup carefully applied, designer clothes that projected successful working mother rather than someone harboring a 20-year-old secret. The perfect facade, just like Belmont House with its manicured lawns hiding decades of darkness. Walking into the library that morning felt surreal. The grand Victorian building had been my sanctuary for the past 15 years, its quiet halls and orderly shelves representing everything I'd built since leaving Belmont House behind. As library director, I had transformed it from a struggling municipal institution into a thriving community center. My colleagues respected me, the board trusted me, none of them knew about the summer of 1999. I managed to focus through 2 budget meetings and a staff presentation, but by 6:30, anxiety had my stomach in knots. The Blue Door was exactly the kind of place Catherine would choose, a small jazz club on the outskirts of town, far from prying eyes. Walking in, I spotted her immediately at a corner table, still elegant at 39, though her face had gained sharp edges that hadn't been there in our youth. "You look successful," she said as I sat down. "Happiness suits you." "Cut the small talk, Catherine. What's going on?" She pulled out an envelope identical to mine, extracting a photograph. This one showed 3 people, Catherine, Marcus, and me, standing in the Belmont House library. The timestamp read July 15, 1999, 2 weeks before everything changed. "Marcus is dead," Catherine said flatly. "Car accident in Switzerland last month." These arrived the day after his obituary ran. My hands grew cold. His father? "Alexander Lawrence died 3 years ago." I checked. "Then who?" Catherine's fingers traced the edge of her wine glass. "Someone else was there that night. Someone we didn't see." The memories rushed back with brutal clarity. Marcus's voice, angry in a way we'd never heard before, the heavy brass paperweight, the sickening sound, Catherine's scream, the frantic hours that followed, digging in the soft earth behind the greenhouse while summer lightning split the sky. "We need to know what they want," Catherine continued. "Money? Revenge? We need to go to the police," I whispered. Catherine's laugh was bitter. 20 years later, with our fingerprints all over the evidence? Think about your daughter, your perfect husband, my Senate campaign. We're not teenagers anymore. We have too much to lose." She was right. The truth would destroy everything, not just our lives, but our families, our careers, the carefully constructed identities we'd built on the foundation of that one terrible night. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of whispered contingency plans. By the time I got home, I had missed James's birthday dinner. He was waiting in the kitchen, concern etched on his familiar face. "Everything okay? You're not answering your phone." "Work emergency," I lied, the words tasting like ash. "I'm so sorry about dinner." He pulled me into a hug, and I fought the urge to confess everything, but the words stayed locked behind my teeth, where they'd lived for 20 years. The next morning brought another package. This time, it contained a key, old brass, heavy with age. I recognized it immediately, the key to the Belmont House library. Attached was a note: "Midnight. Come alone." I spent the day in a fog, going through the motions of normalcy while my mind raced through possibilities. By 11 p.m., I had made my decision. I left a note for James, claiming insomnia and a need to drive, then headed toward Belmont House. The estate had fallen into disrepair since the Lawrence family's departure. Ivy crawled unchecked up the walls, and the once manicured gardens had grown wild. The library key still worked, though the lock protested with years of disuse. Inside, the air was thick with dust and memories. Moonlight filtered through the high windows, casting familiar shadows. This room, with its floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and leather-bound volumes, had once represented everything I wanted: sophistication, escape, possibility. Now it felt like a beautifully decorated tomb. "Hello, Eleanor." The voice came from the shadows near the grand fireplace. A figure stepped forward, and my heart stopped. I knew that face, older now, but unmistakable. Elizabeth Lawrence, Marcus's younger sister, the quiet one, the watcher. "You were there," I breathed. "I saw everything," she confirmed. "Marcus's temper, the argument, the accident, and what you and Catherine did after." "Why now?" "Because the truth deserves to be free." She moved closer. "My brother wasn't a good man, Eleanor. That night wasn't the first time his temper turned violent. But what you and Catherine did, burying him like an animal, letting our family believe he'd simply abandoned us, that was unforgivable. We were scared," I whispered. "We were just kids, and now you're respected adults, pillars of the community." Her smile was sad. "I've watched you both build lives on the foundation of my family's pain. Catherine, preparing to run for office. You, the perfect wife and mother, shaping young minds at your beloved library. What do you want? Justice, but not the kind you fear." Elizabeth pulled out a thick envelope. "Here's every copy of every photograph, every piece of evidence I've gathered. Take it." My hand shook as I accepted the envelope. "I don't understand." "I'm dying, Eleanor. Cancer. I have months, maybe weeks, and I'm tired of carrying this secret." She sank into a nearby chair. "I don't want revenge. I want peace, but that can only come with truth." Dawn was breaking by the time I left Belmont House. I drove straight to Catherine's house, finding her already awake, nursing a coffee on her front porch. Wordlessly, I handed her Elizabeth's envelope. We spent the morning going through everything: photographs, letters, diary entries, the full story of that summer, preserved through the lens of a quiet teenager who saw everything and said nothing. Until now. "We have to tell them," I said finally. "All of it." Catherine was silent for a long moment. It was self-defense. We know that now, with Elizabeth's evidence of his violence. But the cover-up, we'll face whatever comes, I said. Together. The next weeks passed in a blur of confessions and consequences. James, after the initial shock and anger, stood by me. Rachel, showing wisdom beyond her years, asked questions but never judged. The investigation was reopened, and with Elizabeth's evidence, the truth finally emerged. Marcus's death was ruled self-defense. The cover-up brought legal consequences, but our youth and the circumstances led to leniency. Catherine withdrew from the Senate race but found a new calling advocating for domestic violence survivors. Elizabeth passed away peacefully, having finally unburdened herself of the truth she'd carried for so long. And I learned that sometimes the heaviest chains are the ones we forge ourselves, link by link, with our secrets. 1 year later, I stood in front of Belmont House again. The estate had been donated to the town and was being converted into a community arts center. My daughter stood beside me, her hand in mine. "Were you scared?" she asked. "When you decided to tell the truth?" "Terrified," I admitted, "but keeping secrets, it takes pieces of your soul, bit by bit. The truth may hurt, but lies poison you slowly." Rachel squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you, Mom." Looking at her, I saw not just my reflection but my redemption. The chance to teach her that it's never too late to choose honesty, to right a wrong, to begin again. The key charm on my bracelet caught the sunlight, Rachel's birthday gift from what felt like a lifetime ago. A reminder that sometimes the keys we need most aren't the ones that open doors, but the ones that unlock the cages we build around our hearts. That evening, as my family gathered for dinner, James, Rachel, even Catherine and her children, I looked around the table and felt a peace I hadn't known in 20 years. The price of silence had been high, but the reward of truth? That was priceless.